Welcome back again to Last Week I Watched. I'm Mark, and this is Java. I'm currently holding him because he keeps trying to eat my microphone every time I put him on the floor. Say hello. He's a bit of a handful at the moment. I think he's about 15 weeks now. So all those fun things like toilet training and stuff like that. On the plus side, his brother is exhausted and is currently sleeping on the couch, so that does make life a little bit easier. But he is a handful, even though he's adorable. Anyway, I hope you're all well. I've watched some more movies and I'm ready to share some more reviews with you. So, last week I watched World War Z, The King, Mary, Haunt, Cadaver and Hereditary. So let's talk about them. Okay, so first up was World War Z. It's a movie from 2013 starring Brad Pitt, Morel Enos and Daniela Curtiz, and it's showing on Netflix. So this is about a former United Nations employee, Jerry Lane. He's traversing the world in a race against time to stop a zombie pandemic that's toppling armies and governments and threatens to destroy humanity itself. This movie is based on a novel of the same name from 2006 by Max Brooks. Brad Pitt's playing the former investigator Jerry Lane. He's travelling around the world trying to find out where it's originated from and gathering any clues towards finding a way to stop it. I personally enjoyed the globe-trotting aspects of the film. I think it's something that sets it apart from other zombie movies. You often hear in them that the zombie plague has overrun the world, but we've never been able to see it until now. I did read the film had a bit of a rocky production with third act rewrites by Damon Lindelof and Drew Goddard. There were issues because the film had apparently entered production before the script was finished and the ending was abrupt and incoherent. I've also heard that it does differ a bit from the book as well, and that did give it some negative reviews. Changes were made to fix this, but it ultimately caused the budget to balloon to 190 million, which is a lot of money for a film. Several new scenes, including a battle in Moscow's Red Square, were dropped to water down the political aspects of the film, and material relating to China was also excised, which seems a real shame since the geopolitical aspects of the film are what makes it unique from other zombie films. So it was originally on the 2007 blacklist of most liked screenplays not yet produced. It's a shame that the studio couldn't resist the urge to mess with it. There's some pretty good tense action scenes with the zombies, and these ones almost seem like enraged regular people. They're not brain dead stupid. I know that fast-moving zombies have been done before, but these ones actually seem to have a degree of intelligence still to them. At one point they pile themselves up high so they can get over a high wall. They're quite a formidable enemy, and it really highlights how sheer numbers would be overwhelming if there was an actual zombie pandemic. I like that they weren't able to find an actual cure for it, more a way of hiding from the zombies so they could mount an effective defense. I thought that was an interesting spin rather than the everything slides into total apocalypse ending or we find magical cure. Which, you know, good luck manufacturing that and administering it to everyone worldwide. Given the current climate with the pandemic, we'd probably have people picketing for their right to be eaten rather than take a vaccine. Brad Pitt seems invested in the material and he works hard during the film. He was keen to make it a trilogy, but future installments were shelved after the film's production had these troubles. There's also been a couple of times it looked like sequels might happen, but they've been cancelled again, allegedly due to the Chinese government's ban on films featuring zombies and ghosts. Sadly, it appears that studios are willing to allow China to censor the movies we can or can't see. Anyway, check this out if you haven't seen it. It's got some unique things to add to the zombie genre, and it's definitely worth a look. You okay? You good? Alright. On to the next one. The next film was The King. It's from 2019, starring Timothée Chalamet, Tom Glencarny and Ben Mendelsohn, and it was showing on Netflix. So this is about Hal. He's a wayward prince and heir to the English throne, and he's crowned King Henry V after his tyrannical father dies. Now the young king must navigate palace politics, the war his father has left behind, and the emotional strings of his past life. This was adapted from Shakespeare's Henriade, encompassing some of Henry IV and Henry V. It features quite an impressive cast. It's a period drama. It's got some amazing cinematography and recreations of the period. Ben Mendelsohn does a great job as Henry IV, and he's quite unpleasant, but it's not immediately obvious whether he's a bad man or whether he's just crushed under the pressure of ruling. Timothy Chalamet plays his son, Hal, the next King Henry, and he doesn't want the responsibility, but rises to the occasion when it's pressed upon him. It doesn't take long before his inexperience is used against him, and he tries to be a better king. He's much more idealistic and tries to rule more peacefully, but the lords manipulate him into entering a war with France as a kind of massive land grab. This leads to the famous Battle of Agincourt, in which the English defeated the French despite being outnumbered and with less heavy armour. Robert Pattinson's also impressively dickish as the Dolphin, and it looks like he's having a good time insulting the English. Although it does become a little reminiscent of the French abusing the English from the castle walls in Monty Python's Holy Grail. The movie might not be exactly historically accurate, given that it's based more on Shakespeare's plays than actual history, but it does capture in broad strokes the events well and the time period. The siege and battles are impressive and realistic, and the politics and manipulation add an extra dimension to the story. Not much has changed. People of wealth and power still send the common people to fight and die in their wars, so they can all accrue more wealth, power, and in this case land. You right? Got something to add? In this case, it's easy to see why Game of Thrones was based on a lot of these historical events and manipulations. Henry V quickly becomes isolated, and despite being the ruler, is largely a prisoner of his own responsibilities. It's a very good film, and I recommend checking it out. Do you want to hop down now? Will you be good? Let's see what happens. Alright, down you hop. Good boy. Sit. I can't resist that little face. Okay, next up was Mary. It's a film from 2019 starring Gary Oldman, Emily Mortimer, and Manuel Garcia Rulfo, and it was showing on Netflix. So this one's a family looking to start a charter boat business, and they buy a sailing ship that holds terrifying secrets once out on the isolated waters. I thought this might be really good. It's got a good cast, and Gary Oldman and Emily Mortimer try their best, but it largely squanders the acting talent it has available. Narratively, David takes too long to back away from his mistake because he's a good man who's genuinely trying not to let his family fail, and he's ignoring the signs that something is threatening his family. Sarah has more to do, featured heavily throughout, but she's largely tasked with descending into hysteria while trying to keep her family together. Told in a flashback framing device, it disrupts the flow of the story and deflates the tension. Starting at the end, it already gives away that something's gone very, very wrong, and most of them don't survive, so you've already lost the tension around whether one of the main characters will survive or not. Straight out of the gate, it loudly telegraphs that there's something wrong with the boat and that people have gone missing, and it then unleashes the most obvious jump scare of all time, the screaming demon face, and then immediately cuts all the tension from the upcoming supernatural events. The effects are okay, but it's not an especially effects-heavy movie. The setting is pretty good, with the boat having small, tight spaces, which creates a sense of claustrophobia. And of course, their inability to get off the boat creates tension. But overall, the framing story keeps cutting into the story and draining the tension. The jump scares are used so much that you come to expect them, and it's strongly alluded to what was going on from the outset, that there's no real mystery to the viewer as to what's causing the supernatural events. Oi, behave. Thank you. I'm watching you. No chewing on the cables. Like I said, he's a handful. We've actually got a cage that we put him in, but yesterday he learned how to get out of the cage now, and now he scurries up over the side and escapes. Oh, wow. Overall, it's just a meh film. It's not particularly scary. The story isn't very interesting. It leaves a bunch of questions about the why. It doesn't even try to allude to why or how or which /ghost spirit came to be on the ship, or even why it's taking them out to a location to die. Did the witch die in the middle of the ocean? Was she hung on a tree that was chopped down and made into the ship? I don't know, it just doesn't create a compelling villain or an interesting mythology. You're just asked to accept a bunch of stuff happens because no reason. It's a real shame because they had a great cast, the story just needed some more work. I don't recommend it. It's not that good that it's worth your time. but by all means, if you want to, check it out. Next up was Haunt. It's a film from 2019 starring Katie Stevens, Will Brittain, Lauren Alyssa McLean, and it was showing on Netflix. So on Halloween, a group of friends, they encounter an extreme haunted house that promises to feed on their darkest fears. And the night turns deadly as they come to the horrifying realization that some nightmares are real. So this film seems to be a spin on the escape room genre that seems to be popular at the moment, but instead of like overly complex puzzles, this one has slashers and masks stalking around in it. I've never been to a haunted house, but I understand they're a popular thing in the US. This haunted house seems to have a variety of themed locations inside, and the killers have different costumes such as clown, devil, zombie and witch. It's all fairly standard stuff, highlighted by over-the-top kills. This seems to be a hallmark of Eli Roth, who's a producer on this film. It was slightly interesting that the killers are members of a cult that's heavily into body modification and like to make themselves into literal monsters. I'm not quite sure why they were wearing masks and costumes, since they're much more terrifying without the masks on, but maybe it was just an excuse to not have the actors sit through hours of makeup each day. Or maybe they wanted to appear semi-normal when people got there. I don't know. You never find out much about their cult or their motivations. They just apparently like to really, really deface people. There's a bit of a coda at the end, which was fun, where the survivor, having returned home, faces one of the killers again and gets the upper hand. It's an interesting little touch when they could have just ended the film, I guess. Overall, it's a pretty standard slasher flick. There's not too much different there. There's not a heck of a lot of story to be found, but I don't think people watch this genre for the story, really. It's well shot, it's atmospheric, it's reasonably scary. It's worth a look if you like the genre. Check it out. Okay, next up was Cadaver. It's a film from 2020. It stars Thorbjørn Har, Maria Grazia De Mayo, and Thomas Gillestad, and it was showing on Netflix. So in the aftermath of a nuclear disaster or some kind of massive disaster, this family of three are invited to attend an evening at the local hotel for food and entertainment. When their daughter disappears, they begin searching the hotel for her, and the evening takes a dark turn. This is a Norwegian film, so it's probably best to have the subtitles turned on, if you couldn't guess by the names of the people starring in it. Straight out of the gate, it's visually, it's quite an interesting film, and it communicates that something has gone very wrong and people are really struggling to survive. I thought it was quite a nice looking film. When a man comes into the town, he's offering to sell tickets for the night at the hotel with food and entertainment, and obviously this is a huge incentive to struggling families. They're starving, they're desperate for a decent meal, so they quickly jump on the offer. The evening's a real contrast in the opulence offered by the hotel and how people are living there. Everything looks pretty well normal. Everyone enjoys a good meal, and then the hosts tell everyone who's a spectator that they have to wear a mask and follow whichever actor they're interested in around the hotel to enjoy the performance. So as they're wandering following the performers, Leo's daughter disappears while searching for an actress's room, and the parents quickly become frantic. Now, I want to talk in depth a bit more about the premise, but I don't want to spoil anything, so if you think you might be interested in checking this film out, pause now please, and go and watch it and then come back and we can talk about it. Have you paused? No? Great, I'm going on. Gradually, they become aware that the other guests are disappearing, and when they stumble behind the scenes accidentally, they quickly realise that the guests are being butchered for food. There's a huge network of tunnels and trapdoors in the rooms, and it's reminiscent of the chutes that cattle are sent into in a slaughterhouse. Interestingly, the actors aren't aware that's what's happening to the guests, but it's never really explained where they thought the guests were ending up. Maybe they just thought they slipped out the fire exit at the end of the night or something, I don't know. The movie looks great though. The premise is very interesting. It's shot in an atmospheric way. The hotel is initially more warm and inviting than the town, where everything's grey and dying. There's just no life left there. Through the course of the film, the hotel later turns much darker, and other parts of the hotel are much more decrepit and run down and much more like the town. And it eventually uses red light when descending into slaughterhouse, or what I imagine as the underworld of the hotel, where all the evil happens. There's interesting little touches, such as the artwork depicting slaughtered lambs on the walls, and the movie is constantly kind of hinting that things are going on behind the scenes, but to my mind it was pretty clear from the outset. If everything's destroyed and dying and people are starving, where's the food coming from? It seemed likely it would be cannibalism, and interestingly I thought while people were angry about being slaughtered, they didn't seem to be that horrified about what they'd eaten. So I guess survival overrides other instincts as long as it isn't you that's being preyed upon. At the end, when Leo returns to the town with her daughter in tow, the town is shown with bodies in the streets, it's dead, it's dying, and there's no life left there. But the hotel on the hill is shown bathed in God rays, and it's a source of life. It suggests the question of whether they might return there or not. And I like that they kind of left that open, that question. After all, Leo is a trained actor, and she could, in theory, take over the hotel. Despite the fact that the movie was predictable, I'm not quite sure how you could have concealed the premise better. But I still had a good time with it. It was still interesting understanding the how and why of it, even though morally it's pretty repugnant. It does build there's still some good tension. You're still not sure who's going to survive and things like that, so it's pretty good. I recommended it if you would like to wrestle with the ethics of eating people in an extreme situation. It's worth a look, check it out. Okay, the final movie today is Hereditary. It's from 2018. It stars Toni Collette, Millie Shapiro and Alex Wolff. It was showing on Netflix. So when Annie's mentally ill mother suddenly passes away, the family mourn her loss. The family turn to different means to handle their grief, including Annie and her daughter flirting with the supernatural. And there's signs that maybe things haven't been great in the family as well. Annie seems to have some unresolved issues with her mother. But when they all begin to have sort of disturbing otherworldly experiences that seem to be linked to sinister secrets and emotional trauma that's been passed down through generations of their family. I think it's a sign of a good thriller or horror when you can misdirect the viewer away from the predictable storyline and twist towards something unexpected. Initially I was expecting a fairly standard haunted house type of thing, perhaps with the family being terrorized by the recently deceased grandmother. But I was pleasantly surprised as it pivots a few times during the story. At one point it implied that maybe the mother's history of mental illness in the family might have been appearing to be causing problems. The mother, played by Toni Collette, certainly seems to have some breathtaking control issues, with her work making tiny miniature scenes in exquisite detail, seeming to represent her ability to control the outside world around her. And she certainly retreats into that space whenever she seems to be stressed and deals with it by constructing models. One model in particular is massively inappropriate and was a real what the hell moment, but there you go, you'll figure it out when you see it. The daughter Charlie, played by Millie Shapiro, also seemed like she might have mental health issues. She's quite a strange child. She did a great job. Toni Collette does a great job, and her breakdown after the deaths was heartbreaking. It was really destroying. I really felt that, this is a woman that's deeply affected by events happening to her family. I expected that Charlie might have affected more of the story, so it was really shocking when she's suddenly and very graphically removed from the story. It's certainly one of the more shocking ways I think I've ever seen someone killed in film. So I read that it was inspired by an actual incident where something similar occurred, which I thought was quite interesting. Peter, who's played by Alex Wolff, his response to the incident surprised me a lot. And I did wonder why he didn't, go home and tell anyone or, have to explain what had happened. But apparently this was also part of the real life incident as well, where this thing happened and this person, I guess, went into shock and just went home and went to bed, and somebody else found it the next day. So that's a thing. I also did think he would have been in trouble with the police, but I guess that wasn't important to the story. It doesn't seem to happen. It's just kind of glossed over. And for a little while there, I did wonder if they'd even just sort of reported the accident, but I guess later on when people commented on it, they've sort of confirmed that I guess they had. Anyway, these things happening just serve to further fracture the family, and you kind of watch the family unit just disintegrate. When it starts to go on to hint that grandmother may have some sort of input in all of this, it really sends Annie down the rabbit hole towards crazy. When she meets a mysterious woman who offers to console her on a recent loss, or losses. I was expecting the suggestion of a seance to maybe be some way to con Annie. They even go as far as to suggest that, seances and con people kind of go together, and that maybe this might move into a more traditional haunting or something like that. I would absolutely definitely suggest, though, that if someone gives you incantations in a weird language, don't go home and do it. It's not going to end well, ever. So I want to talk about the ending and stuff now. So if you don't want any spoilers, hit pause now and go and watch the film. Okay, you had your chance. So when it's finally started to reveal that grandmother had been part of a coven of witches and they've been trying to summon a demon that would bestow them with wealth and power and dark control over humanity, I was surprised because I haven't seen a demon possession movie in years, certainly not one with witches. It brings back memories of classic horror movies such as The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. The movie again goes full-on supernatural crazy, and I was quite pleased that it had a very dark ending. I'd almost be curious for a sequel just to see what Pyman would get up to. But overall, it was a pleasant surprise. It was a very good film. It manipulated my expectations, and I highly recommend it. It's great to see the genre or horror films expand away from slashers, because it kind of felt like for a while that was all we were getting after sort of Nightmare on Elm Street. Everybody sort of jumped on the slasher genre, and I used to enjoy the old Hammer House of Horror movies, the good old Sunday horrors that we used to have, where you get a variety of different stories, particularly some of the British ones, where they're often a lot more character-driven and more suspenseful and claustrophobic. And this one felt more reminiscent of that, while still having some very effective scares. So check it out. I highly recommend it. Okay, so those are my suggestions for this week. As always, feel free to leave comments below, make any suggestions of things that you think I should watch. They would be very welcome, and I would be happy to talk about any films with you as well. It'd be nice to get a little community going. As always, click on the like and subscribe and the bell button, please. It helps me to build my channel. I'm trying really hard to improve my product and improve my content rather, and get it looking better, sounding better, writing better reviews and things like that. So any kind of feedback you've got, please keep it constructive. Leave it below. I would definitely take it on board. As always, I hope that you are all well. We are still trapped largely inside. Unfortunately, we've had some we opened up and things have not gone well. We're now getting some growing death toll numbers, which is pretty sad. So largely we're staying inside and watching movies and binging TV, and I hope you are too, and that you're doing whatever you need to do to stay safe out there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye now.